Now let's dive into a new, exciting story. The music boomed so loudly that the walls of the old house on the outskirts of the city seemed to tremble in time with the bass. The living room, littered with empty cups and chip wrappers, was crowded with people, some dancing, some arguing loudly about the latest football match, and some just standing against the wall, pretending not to feel out of place. Peter was in the latter category. He leaned against the peeling paint, holding a plastic glass of warm beer that he had no intention of finishing. The party at Tom's, their mutual friend from school, promised to be legendary, but so far Peter saw only familiar faces grimacing under the light of a cheap disco lamp. "Hey, why are you stuck in the corner?" Tom appeared next to him, slapping him on the shoulder so that the beer almost spilled out. His eyes sparkled from drinking, and his smile stretched from ear to ear. "It's my party, Pete. Let's have fun." "I'm having fun," Peter muttered, looking away. I don't know, it's not all my thing." "Not yours?" Tom laughed as if he had heard the best joke of the evening. "You just didn't try it. Go out and dance with someone. Their Kate is spinning around the sofa. She definitely won't refuse." Peter grimaced. Kate was noisy, loud, and always pretended to be a star. He didn't want to dance, especially with her. "I'll think about it," he lied, if only Tom would leave behind. "Well, look, you'll miss your chance." Tom winked and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Peter alone again. He sighed, looking at the flurry of people. Maybe he shouldn't have come at all. It would be calmer at home. I would turn on some old movies, make tea, and not scream at you. But Tom insisted, and Peter, as always, could not say no. Now he stood there, feeling out of place, while the others seemed to be enjoying the moment. And then he noticed her. She stood by the window, slightly away from the main crowd. A girl with dark hair casually tied into a high ponytail, wearing a simple black top and jeans. In her hands was a glass with something bright orange, probably juice or a cocktail. She did not dance, did not laugh loudly, but simply looked out the window, as if trying to see something behind the glass, despite the darkness outside. Peter involuntarily kept his gaze on her. There was something calm about her, different from this chaos around. "Are you not a party fan either?" A voice pulled him out of his thoughts. He turned around and realized that she was looking straight at him. Her eyes, brown, with a slight sparkle, caught him by surprise. "And what?" Peter hesitated, feeling his cheeks begin to burn. "Great, now he also looks like an idiot." She smiled not widely, but just from the corner of her lips, but it was enough to make his heart beat a little faster. "I'm telling you, you don't like parties either," she repeated, nodding at his glass. "You're standing here as if you're serving a sentence." "Well," he coughed, trying to collect his thoughts. "It's not that I don't like it. I just don't know what to do here." "I thought you strategically positioned yourself in a corner to watch everyone." She stepped closer, and Peter caught the slight scent of her perfume, something floral, but not cloying, like a spy on a mission. "Spy?" He chuckled, relaxing. "Then I failed the mission. I've already been exposed." "You bet," she laughed, and her laughter was soft, unobtrusive. "My name is Julie, by the way." "Peter," he nodded, feeling the tension release. "Do you know Tom?" "Yes, he played on the same team with my brother." Julie shrugged. "And you?" "We went to school with him. He dragged me here and said it would be fun." "And how is it fun?" She narrowed her eyes, as if testing his honesty. "I'm not sure yet," Peter admitted, looking into her eyes. "What about you?" "I haven't understood it yet either." Julie turned to the window and took a sip from her glass. "But the view from here is not bad. If you close your eyes, you can't see anything." Peter smiled. She was strange, not in a bad way, but in a kind of interesting way, not like the others here. "Do you do this often?" he asked, not knowing why. "What exactly?" "You stand at the window and pretend that there is something there." "Only when I'm bored." She looked at him with a slight mockery. "Do you often hide in the corner with warm beer?" "This is not beer, this is." He looked into the glass and grimaced. "Okay, yes, beer. But I don't drink it, I just keep it so as not to stand out." "Cunning," Julie nodded, as if approving. And if I say that there is just juice in my glass, will you believe me? I don't know, Peter squinted. Prove it. Prove it. She raised an eyebrow, then raised the glass to his face. Smell it. He leaned over and inhaled. It smelled like orange, without a hint of alcohol. I believe, he said, pulling away. You're clearly the most sober of everyone here. Aren't you? Julie looked at his glass doubtfully. I haven't even started. He raised his glass, showing that it was almost full. So we're both sober. A rarity for a party. Maybe this is our secret club, she grinned. Sober at the window. Sounds like the title of a bad movie, Peter chuckled, but something sank inside. She was joking, and he already caught himself thinking that he wanted to continue this conversation. Or like the beginning of a good story. Julie shrugged and looked out the window again. Listen, have you ever thought that there, behind the glass, there might be something cooler than here? For example, he stepped closer, without noticing it. Don't know. Stars, silence, empty streets. Anything, just not this noise. Then why did you come here? He asked, genuinely curious. My friend persuaded me, Julie sighed. She said that I sit at home too much. And you? Tom, Peter answered shortly. He's worse than any girlfriend when it comes to persuasion. It looks like we are both victims of friends, she smiled wider, and this time there was genuine warmth in her eyes. They fell silent, but the silence was not awkward. The music continued to blare. Someone nearby spilled beer and swore loudly, and Peter and Julie stood at the window, as if in their own little world. He suddenly found himself looking at her a little longer than necessary, at her cheekbones, at her slight smile, at the way she fingered the edge of the glass with her fingers. Do you want to go outside? He blurted out without having time to think. Julie turned to him, blinking in surprise. What, right now? Well, yes, Peter shrugged, trying to look more confident than he felt. You said to yourself that it could be better there. What if it rains there? She narrowed her eyes, but there was a hint of play in her voice. Then let's come back, he smiled. Or we'll hide under the visor. I'm not made of sugar. Okay, Julie put the glass on the windowsill. But if I get wet, it will be your fault. We agreed, Peter nodded, feeling warmth spreading inside. He threw his glass in the same place where hers stood and followed her to the exit. It was cool outside, but fortunately there was no rain. They walked out onto the porch, and the noise of the party became a muffled background. Julie breathed in the fresh air, closing her eyes, and Peter looked at her and thought that it seemed that the evening was no longer such a failure. Well, is it better than inside? He asked, putting his hands in his pockets. For now, yes. She opened her eyes and looked at him. What do you say? I'll say that you were right. He nodded towards the dark street ahead. It's really quieter here. Then maybe we can go for a walk, Julie suggested, and there was not a drop of doubt in her voice. Why not? Peter stepped off the porch, and she walked next to him. They walked slowly down the street, talking about all kinds of nonsense, about how Tom once got stuck in his locker at school, about how Julie's friend tried to bake a cake and burned down the kitchen. The conversation flowed easily, without tension, and Peter suddenly realized that he did not want this night to end. For the first time that evening, he felt in his place, not in the corner with warm beer, but next to her, under the stars, which, as it turned out, were still visible if you moved further away from the house. The sun was lazily setting, painting the sky over the park in soft shades of orange and pink. Peter sat on an old wooden bench, nervously fiddling with the hem of his jacket. This was their first real date, not a chance meeting at a party, not a spontaneous walk under the stars, but something he himself suggested. He wrote to Julie in the morning, after many minutes of doubt, and, to his surprise, she immediately agreed to meet in the park. Now he waited, glancing at the path leading to the entrance, trying to calm his pounding heart. Am I late? Her voice came unexpectedly, and Peter shuddered, turning around. Julie stood a few steps away, wearing a light denim jacket and wearing the same smile he remembered from the party. Her hair was loose, and a light wind played with it, throwing strands on her face. No, I came early, he stood up, feeling his palms sweating. You look great. Thank you. She tilted her head slightly, as if appraising him. You're okay, too. What is this, a new jacket? No, it's old, I just cleaned it, Peter lied, although in fact he had been rummaging through the closet for half an hour, choosing what to wear. Do you want to go for a walk? Come on, Julie nodded, and they moved along the path strewn with fallen leaves. At first it was quiet. Not awkward, but simply calm, as if both were getting used to the fact that now they were not just chatting at a party, but walking next to some new goal. Peter stole glances at her, noting how she squinted in the sun, how her fingers lightly squeezed the strap of her bag. He wanted to say something smart, but only platitudes were spinning in his head. Do you come here often? He finally asked, nodding at the trees around him. Sometimes, Julie shrugged, when you want to think. And you? Not really, he admitted. But Tom and I once rode bikes here. He, however, crashed into a tree. Seriously? She laughed, and her laughter again seemed surprisingly warm to Peter. How did he even stay alive? I don't know, he has talent, Peter smiled. Don't you have such stories? There is one, Julie thought, looking somewhere into the distance. My friend and I once decided to have a picnic here in the summer. They brought food, a blanket, everything was as it should be. And then it started to rain, and we hid under this bridge for half an hour. She pointed to a small stone bridge ahead. Wet, but happy. Sounds like an adventure, he chuckled. Maybe we should try too. Just no rain. We agreed. She looked at him with a slight mockery. But if it rains, you carry me in your arms home. Is this a challenge? Peter narrowed his eyes. This is a test, she winked, and he felt something turn inside him. They walked for another hour, talking about little things about school, about how Julie accidentally dyed her hair green one day, and how Peter failed his chemistry exam because he fell asleep at his desk. Gradually, the conversation became easier and the steps closer. When the sun had almost set, they sat down on another bench, and Peter, plucking up courage, took her hand. Julie didn't pull away, just looked at him and squeezed his fingers lightly in response. Are you always this quiet? She asked, looking into his eyes. I don't know, he shrugged. I seem to be talking to you normally. That's good, she smiled. I thought you were one of those people who stay silent all evening and then say something brilliant. Brilliant? Peter chuckled. It's unlikely. I'm more into dumb jokes. Let's check. Julie leaned closer. Tell me one. Okay, he thought for a second. Why didn't the skeleton come to the party? Why? She narrowed her eyes. Because he didn't have a body to dance with, Peter said with a serious face, and Julie burst out laughing. God, this is terrible, she said, but continued to laugh. You won. So I passed the test. He smiled, feeling her laughter warming him from the inside. For now, yes, she nodded, but I still have a lot of tests. This is how their meetings began. They saw each other almost every day, sometimes in the park, sometimes in a small coffee shop on the corner that served 2 sweet lattes, or just walking the streets until it got dark. Peter found that it was easy for him to be with Julie. She did not demand that he be someone else, and he, in turn, found himself wanting to get to know her more and more. Her favorite color was blue, her favorite song was something old from Nirvana, and she hated olives. He remembered everything as if it were important. One day, a couple of weeks later, they were sitting on the couch at Peter's house. His parents were away for the weekend, and he, a little shy, invited her to watch a movie. They chose an old rom-com, but after half an hour, they weren't following the plot anymore. Julie was laughing as Peter tried to open a bag of popcorn, and it burst, scattering the kernels all over the floor. You're hopeless, she said, removing the popcorn from his knee. It was a conspiracy. He pretended to be offended. The package exploded on its own. Of course, she rolled her eyes, but then looked at him more softly. You're cute, you know. Cute? Peter raised an eyebrow. Is this a compliment or a sentence? Compliment. Julie moved closer, and he felt the warmth of her shoulder. I feel good with you. Me too, he said quietly, looking into her eyes. And suddenly, without any plan, he leaned over and kissed her. Her lips were soft, slightly sweet from the soda they drank. Julie froze for a second and then responded by placing her hand on his neck. It was their first kiss, awkward but sincere, full of that trepidation that only happens for the first time. When they pulled away, they were both silent but smiling. It was, she began but hesitated. Cool, Peter prompted, hoping he didn't screw it up. Yes, Julie nodded. Very cool. A few days later, sitting in the same coffee shop, he said, I love to her for the first time. It came out by accident they were arguing about which movie was better, and she wrinkled her nose so funny that he couldn't resist. You know, I love you, he blurted out, and then froze, afraid that he had gone too far. Julie looked at him, blinking in surprise, and then smiled. I love you too, she said quietly, and Peter felt the world around him become brighter. Their relationship was gaining momentum. They were young, inexperienced, but full of hope. And then came the evening that changed everything. They were again at Peter's house. The parents had left again. The film on the screen had long ended, and they lay on the sofa, kissing more and more boldly. Julie pressed herself against him. Her breathing became faster, and Peter realized that he wanted her not just kisses, but something more. You are sure? She asked as his hands slid under her t-shirt. Yes, he answered hoarsely. And you? Yes, she nodded, and a mixture of fear and desire flashed in her eyes. Everything was awkward, clumsy. They laughed when they got stuck in their clothes, blushed when something went wrong. But there was something real about it. Their first time is not perfect, like in the movies, but real, full of their feelings for each other. Then they lay under the blanket, hugging each other, and Peter listened to her breathing, thinking that he had never been so happy. Roman 4. It was strange, right? Julie whispered, burying herself in his shoulder. A little, he smiled, but it's cool. Very cool, she laughed quietly, and he kissed her forehead. Julie sat on the edge of the bathtub, staring at the white strip of plastic in her hands. Two clear pink lines stared back at her, as if mocking her attempts to convince herself that this was a mistake. She bought the test in the morning, almost automatically, after realizing that the delay had been going on for a week. Then it seemed just a formality to check in order to calm down. But now, in the cramped bathroom of her apartment, with the smell of lavender soap and the sound of a dripping faucet, reality hit her like an icy wave. Pregnant. Julie is an 18-year-old girl who just yesterday was arguing with Peter about which pizza to give a second chance, Hawaiian or anchovy. No, 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 she muttered, putting the test down on the sink with shaking hands. This is some kind of mistake. Maybe it's defective. She grabbed the box that was lying on the floor and began feverishly reading the instructions, although she already knew what was written there. 2 stripes, a positive result. 99% accuracy. 99%. It's almost certain. Julie pressed her palms to her face, trying to take a deep breath, but the air was stuck somewhere in her chest. She wanted to call her mother, her friend, anyone but Peter came to mind first. Damn, what am I going to tell him? She whispered, looking at her reflection in the mirror. Pale face, disheveled hair, eyes full of panic. She wasn't ready for this. They weren't ready. Julie stood up, put the test in her jeans pocket as if hiding it would hide the truth, and went into the room. Her phone lay on the table, the screen flashing with a notification about a missed message from Peter. Are you free today? We can go to the movies. She froze, looking at these words. Movie. As if it could still be that simple. Okay, she said to herself, clutching the phone. We need to talk to him. Right now. She dialed his number, but when she heard the dial tone, she almost hung up. It's too late, he replied. Hello, Peter's voice was light, a little sleepy. How are you? Hi, Julie swallowed, trying to sound normal. Are you home? Yes, I just got back from training, he chuckled. Tom again built everyone up like a general. What are you doing? Nothing special, she lied, fiddling with the edge of her sleeve. Listen, can I come to you? Right now? Of course, a surprise flashed in his voice. Did something happen? No, I want to see you. She forced a smile, although he didn't see it. I'll be there soon. I'm waiting, he said briefly and hung up. Julie threw the phone on the bed, grabbed her jacket, and ran out of the apartment without even looking in the mirror. She needed to move, otherwise she would simply go crazy sitting alone with this news. Peter answered the door in his worn t-shirt with the logo of some rock band and his hair damp from the shower. He smiled when he saw her, but the smile quickly faded from his face when he noticed her intense gaze. "Are you okay?" he asked, stepping back to let her inside. "You look, I don't know, strange." "I'm fine." Julie stepped into the hallway, squeezing her hands in her pockets. The test in the jeans seemed red hot, as if it was burning through the fabric. "Just tired, probably." "Sure." He closed the door and turned to her. "If Tom bothers you, tell me. I'll hit him." "No, not Tom." She forced out a laugh, but it came out forced. "Let's sit down, shall we?" Peter nodded, still frowning, and led her into the living room. They plopped down on the sofa, the same one where everything happened a couple of weeks ago, their first time, awkward and so important. Julie looked at the worn upholstery and felt a lump in her throat. "You're scaring me," Peter said, sitting closer. "Is something wrong? Speak already." "I—" She hesitated, looking at her hands. "I have news for you. I just don't know how to say it." "What's the news?" He leaned towards her, trying to catch her gaze. "Did you win the lottery, or are you flying into space?" "If only," Julie smiled bitterly. "This is more serious." "Come on, lay it out." He took her hand, and his warm fingers calmed her down a little. "You know I don't bite." She took a deep breath, pulled the test out of her pocket, and placed it on the table in front of him. The two stripes stood out brightly against the white plastic. Peter froze, looking at it, as if not understanding what it was. "This. What do I think?" He finally squeezed out, looking up at her. "Yes," Julie said quietly. "I'm pregnant." The silence hung heavy, like a wet blanket. Peter blinked and opened his mouth, but said nothing. His hand, still holding her, trembled slightly. "Are you serious?" he asked after a second, his voice hoarse. "This is not a joke?" "No," she shook her head. "I only found out this morning. I bought a test, I thought, just to check. But here it is." "Damn!" He leaned back on the couch, rubbing his face with his hands. "Damn, Julie." "I know," she pursed her lips, feeling the tears welling up. "I'm shocked." "Wait," Peter straightened up, looking at her. "Are you sure? Maybe check again?" "The instructions say 99% accuracy," she shrugged. "But I can buy another one if you want." "No, I believe." He ran his hand through his hair, leaving it sticking out in different directions. "Just how?" "Well, I know how, but damn." "Yes, we didn't use protection," Julie said quietly, looking down. "That time, we just didn't think." "Yes," he nodded, as if remembering. "I'm a fool. It was necessary." "We both didn't think," she interrupted him. "It's not only your fault." Peter looked at her, and a whole storm flashed in his eyes: confusion, fear, something else. He took her hand again and squeezed it tighter. "How are you?" he asked finally. "I mean, how do you feel?" "I don't know," Julie sniffled. "I was scared. I don't understand what to do." "And you?" "Me too," he chuckled, but without amusement. "It's like a truck crashed at full speed. We just started dating." "Yes," she nodded. "And now, this is a child," he said quietly, as if tasting the word, "our child." Julie looked at him, and something in his voice, hesitant but warm, made her heart clench. She suddenly realized that he was not moving away, not running away, but sitting here, next to her, and trying to comprehend this with her. "Aren't you angry?" she asked, almost in a whisper. "Am I angry?" Peter blinked in surprise. "On you? No, I don't know how I feel, but I'm not angry. Just crazy." "Me too," she smiled faintly. "What should we do now?" "I don't know," he shrugged. "We need to think about it. Should I tell someone?" "I don't want it for Mom yet." Julie shook her head. "She will kill me, or it will force me to do something, but I haven't decided yet." "Mine won't be happy either," Peter grimaced. Dad will definitely say that I ruined everything. Did we really ruin everything? She asked, looking into his eyes. He fell silent, lost in thought. Then he shook his head. Don't know. Maybe they didn't spoil it, but changed it, just not the way we planned. We didn't plan anything at all, Julie chuckled. Peter moved closer, hugged her, and she buried herself in his shoulder. They sat for a long time, silently, until it got dark outside the window. The news of the pregnancy hung over them like a cloud, but at that moment they were together, confused, young, but together, and both understood that their lives would never be the same. The morning at Julie's house began with the smell of coffee and the sound of her mother's footsteps in the kitchen. She sat at the table, clutching a mug of cold tea in her hands, and tried to gather her courage. A week had passed since she found out she was pregnant, and all this time she and Peter had kept the news a secret, texting and whispering on the phone like conspirators. But last night, after Peter tried to come up with a plan again, Julie realized that she couldn't put it off any longer. She should tell her mom. And now, looking at her trembling fingers, she regretted that she had not stayed in bed. Why are you so thoughtful? The voice of her mother, Linda, pulled her out of her thoughts. She stood at the stove, stirring something in a frying pan. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and the fine lines around her eyes showed her fatigue. Have you been chatting with Peter half the night again? No, Julie shook her head, although it was almost true. I just didn't get enough sleep. Well, go to bed early. Linda glanced at her quickly. Otherwise, you walk around like a ghost. Will you have breakfast? I don't want to. Julie swallowed. Mom, can I talk? Of course. Linda turned off the stove and turned to her, wiping her hands on the apron. What's happened? Did you quarrel with your friend again? No, not with a friend. Julie lowered her gaze to the table, feeling her heart pounding. It's about me and Peter. Peter? Linda frowned, sitting down opposite. You broke up, or what? No, Julie shook her head. Vice versa. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air, heavy and motionless. Linda froze, her apron hand stopping halfway. Then she exhaled slowly, as if trying to comprehend what she had heard. Repeat, she said quietly, but steel was already ringing in her voice. What did you say? I'm pregnant. Julie looked up, meeting her mother's gaze. I've known for a week now. Jesus, Julie. Linda leaned back in her chair, pressing her palm to her forehead. Are you serious? Is this not a joke? No. Julie squeezed the mug tighter. I took a test. Twice. Twice. Linda repeated this, as if tasting the words, and then abruptly stood up, starting to walk around the kitchen. What are you going to do? Do you even understand what this means? I don't know, Julie shrugged, feeling the tears welling up. Peter and I haven't decided yet. Haven't decided? Linda stopped, looking down at her. Julie, only a year has passed since you came of age. You are still children yourself. I know, Julie sniffed, but it already happened. It happened, Linda snorted, crossing her arms. How did this happen? Didn't you think with your head at all? We didn't plan to, Julie said quietly. It just happened that way. It happened, Linda shook her head, her voice getting louder. And now what? Are you going to raise a child? One? Or with this Peter of yours, who is probably also in a panic? He's not panicking, Julie straightened up, protecting him. He talked to me, we think together. We're thinking together, Linda chuckled sarcastically. What were you thinking when you started all this? God, Julie, I thought you were smarter. I'm sorry, Julie lowered her head, feeling her mother's words cut like knives. I didn't want to upset you. Upset? Linda sat down again, her voice softening a little. I'm not upset, I'm shocked. These are not toys, you know. This is a child. Your life will now change forever. I know, Julie nodded. That's why I told you. I want you to help. Did you help? Linda looked at her, and a mixture of anger and concern flashed in her eyes. Fine. Then here's what we'll do. You and Peter will get married. What? Julie blinked, not believing her ears. Mom, are you serious? Absolutely. Linda crossed her arms. You did this yourself, now you will answer. A child should grow up in a family and not with a single mother and a father who wanders around somewhere. But we're not ready yet. Julie hesitated. We just started dating. Were you ready for a child? Linda narrowed her eyes. That's it, Julie. Marriage is the only normal way out. I'll talk to my father and Peter's parents too. Mom, wait. Julie jumped up, panic growing. We haven't decided yet. What is there to decide? Linda looked at her firmly. Or do you want to get rid of pregnancy? Is this what you're discussing with Peter? No, Julie shook her head. I don't want to. But marriage, it's too fast. It was quick when you jumped into bed. Linda stood up, ending the conversation. I'll call my father and tell Peter to get ready. This is not discussed. Julie remained seated, staring at her empty mug. Her heart was pounding and her head was in chaos. She didn't want to argue with her mother, but the thought of marriage now, with Peter, when they had not yet figured it out, seemed like a trap to her. That evening, Peter stood on the threshold of his house, looking at his father as he paced the living room. Mom sat on the sofa, nervously fiddling with the edge of the pillow. Linda called an hour ago, and now his parents knew everything. The conversation had started with shouting, then settled into a heavy silence, and now the father, Michael, had finally spoken. Do you understand what you've done? His voice was low, with a hint of suppressed rage. Are you even thinking, Peter? Yes, Peter nodded, clenching his fists in his pockets. I know this is serious. Seriously? Michael snorted. It's not serious, it's a disaster. You haven't even found a normal job, and you already have a child. We didn't want to. Peter looked down. It's accidental. Accidentally, Michael shook his head. And now what? Do you think I will support you all my life? Both her and the child? No, Peter straightened up. I'll figure it out myself. Will you figure it out? Mom, Ellen, intervened, her voice trembling. Peter, you are still a child yourself. How will you figure it out? I don't know yet, he shrugged. But I won't leave Julie. You can't leave her. Michael stopped, looking at him. Julie's mother called. They want you to get married. And I agree with her. Marry? Peter blinked, feeling the floor disappear from under his feet. Dad, we haven't thought about this yet. What were you thinking? Michael raised his voice. About how much fun it will be in the bedroom? It's too late to think now, son. You made a child, now you will be a family. But Peter hesitated. We're not ready. No one is ready at your age. Ellen looked at him softer, but firmly. My father and I also got married early. And they did it. You can too. That's different. Peter shook his head. Julie and I, we love each other, but a wedding is too much. Love is good, Michael crossed his arms, but now you have responsibility. A child should not grow up without a father and without a family. I'm not going to leave him, Peter clenched his jaw, but getting married right now. No buts, Michael interrupted him. Julie's mother and I agreed. The wedding will be modest, but it will happen. And period. Peter looked at his father, then at his mother, and realized that it was useless to argue. They decided for him. Here's to them and Julie. He nodded, although everything inside screamed against it. Later that night, Peter called Julie. She answered immediately, her voice tired. How are you? He asked, lying on the bed and looking at the ceiling. It's bad, she sighed. Mom wants us to get married. She said there was no other way out. It's the same for me. Peter closed his eyes. Your mom and dad have already decided everything. What should we do? Julie hesitated. We didn't want this, did we? I don't know, he admitted honestly. I love you. But the wedding, it shouldn't be like this. I love you too, she said quietly. But I'm scared. What if we fail? Peter clutched the phone. Maybe they are right. Maybe marriage is the way out. Do you really think so? Hope flashed in her voice, mixed with doubt. I don't know, he exhaled. But maybe I should try. Okay, Julie paused. Let's try. They agreed to meet tomorrow and discuss everything with their parents. But after hanging up, They both felt the same thing: doubt, fear, and the feeling that they were being driven into a corner from which there was no way out. The wedding day began with gray skies and light rain pattering on the windows of Peter's old house. He stood in front of the mirror in his room, pulling on the white shirt that his mother had ironed yesterday with such diligence, as if it could make everything that was happening less strange. The shirt was a little too big. They borrowed it from my father because I didn't have time to buy my own. Peter looked at his reflection: pale face, dark circles under his eyes, hair that he tried to smooth out, but it still stuck out. He didn't look like a groom. He looked like a guy who had been up all night, because that's exactly what he was. "Are you ready?" The voice of Ellen, his mother, came from behind the door. She looked inside, holding the tie in her hands. "Let me help." I myself, Peter took the tie, but his fingers trembled, and the knot turned out to be crooked. "Give it here." Ellen gently took the fabric and began to tie it. Her movements were fast and confident. "It's okay. Everyone is worried before the wedding." "It's not exciting," he muttered, looking to the side. I don't know what." "Everything will be fine," she finished with the tie and patted him on the shoulder. "You and Julie can handle it. The main thing is together." "Together," Peter repeated without enthusiasm. He wanted to believe, but inside everything was clenched with the feeling that this was not his choice. Julie's house was no better. She sat on a chair in her room while her mother pulled her hair into a simple low bun. The white dress short, bought in a hurry in a store on a nearby street, hung on her like someone else's. It was cute, but not what she dreamed of as a child, imagining a wedding. Then she saw herself in a long wedding dress, with a veil and flowers, and not in this modest piece of fabric that Linda chose for its practicality. "Don't twitch." Linda secured the hairpin, pulling her hair a little harder. "I want you to look decent." "I already look decent," Julie grimaced, looking at her reflection in the small mirror. "Is this even necessary?" "What is this?" Linda narrowed her eyes, stepping back. "Wedding? Of course it is necessary. You don't want a child to be born without a family, do you?" "I'm talking about the hair," Julie sighed, although her mother's question still cut her teeth. "I'm fine as is." "Today is not normal, but beautiful." Linda straightened the collar of her dress. "You're a bride, Julie. Act accordingly." "Bride," Julie repeated the word, but it sounded empty. She didn't feel like a bride. She felt like a girl who was forced to play a game whose rules she did not know. "Everything will be quick." Linda softened her tone, noticing her tension. "The ceremony, a few words, and it's done. And then you will start a new life." "A new life," Julie nodded, but inside everything screamed that she was not ready for this new life. She wanted to call Peter to hear his voice, but the phone was left in the other room, and there was no time. The ceremony took place in a small hall of the local city hall. No church, no magnificent decorations. Several rows of chairs, gray walls, a table with papers, and a woman in a formal suit who was supposed to marry them. My parents insisted on the simplest option: minimum costs, minimum time. There were only a few people sitting on the chairs: Peter and Julie's parents, her older brother, who came from out of town, and Tom, the only friend they had invited. He looked out of place in his bright sweater in this dull environment, but at least he smiled, trying to lighten the mood. Peter stood at the table, shifting from foot to foot. His suit, black trousers, and the same shirt and tie looked a little rumpled, but he tried to stay upright. When Julie walked in holding Linda's hand, he froze. She looked beautiful even in this simple dress, even with a tired face. But her eyes, they were empty, as if she also did not understand what she was doing here. "Hello," he whispered as she came closer. "Hi," Julie smiled faintly, squeezing his hand. "How are you?" "I don't know," he answered honestly. "And you?" "The same," she shrugged, and that was the only thing they managed to say to each other before starting. The woman at the table coughed to attract attention. Her voice was dry, like autumn leaves outside the window. "We are gathered here to register the marriage between Peter James Collins and Julian Marie Reed," she began, leafing through the papers. "If anyone is against it, speak up now." Silence. Peter glanced at his parents. His father was sitting with a stony face. His mother was nervously fiddling with her purse. Linda looked straight ahead, as if she was afraid that someone would object. Julie squeezed his hand a little tighter. "Peter, do you agree to take Julian as your wife?" the woman asked, looking at him over her glasses. He hesitated, feeling all eyes on him. This was the moment when he could say no. He could have turned around and left. But he looked at Julie, at her pale face, at her fingers trembling in his hand, and realized that he could not leave her. "Yes," he squeezed out, and his voice sounded hoarse. "Julian, do you agree to take Peter as your husband?" Julie swallowed. She wanted to scream that she was not ready, that this was too fast, that she loved Peter, but this was not how she imagined their future. But her mother was looking at her, and Peter's father, and even Tom, who for some reason had stopped smiling. She nodded. "Yes," she said quietly, almost in a whisper. "I declare you husband and wife." The woman quickly signed the documents. "You can exchange rings." The rings were cheap, bought hastily at the corner jewelry store. Peter put a thin silver ring on Julie's finger, and she put the same one on his. The metal was cold, alien. They looked at each other, and there was no joy in their eyes, only confusion. "Kiss the bride," the woman prompted, and Peter leaned down, touching Julie's lips. It was a short, awkward kiss, not at all like the ones before. No one clapped, only Tom let out some kind of hesitant whistle. After the ceremony, they were taken to an adjacent room for photos. A few shots of Peter and Julie standing next to each other with tight smiles, then with their parents, then together. The camera clicked, but every sound seemed like a hammer blow, hammering nails into their new reality. The holiday was held at Peter's parents' house. The table in the living room was set modestly sandwiches, a cake from the supermarket, a bottle of champagne, which no one bothered to open because Julie could not drink. The parents tried to keep the conversation going, but it seemed strained. Well, for the young, Michael raised his glass of juice, looking at Peter and Julie, "So that everything works out for you." "Yes," Linda nodded, but her smile was more like a grimace. "You are family now. This is the main thing." "Family," Ellen repeated, squeezing her husband's hand. "We will help you as much as we can." Peter and Julie were silent, sitting next to each other on the sofa. They held hands, but it was more for show. Tom, the only one trying to joke, raised his glass. "For Pete and Julie," he said loudly, "so that the child would be like me and not like you freaks." No one laughed, and he coughed embarrassedly, putting his glass down. When the guests left, Peter and Julie were left alone in his room. They moved here for the first time. Their parents decided that it would be easier until they get on their feet. Julie sat on the bed, looking at the ring on her finger. "It's strange, right?" she asked quietly. "Very." Peter sat down next to him, taking off his tie. "I still don't believe we're married." "Me too," Han turned to him. "Do you regret it?" "I don't know," he shrugged. "And you?" "I don't know," Julie smiled faintly. "But you are now my husband." "And you are my wife," he chuckled, but without amusement. "Can we handle it?" "I hope so." She moved closer, laying her head on his shoulder. The night was long, endless, like a tunnel with no light at the end. Julie lay in the hospital bed, clutching the rails until her knuckles turned white. Sweat dripped down her forehead, her hair stuck to her temples, and her breathing was ragged and intermittent. The pain came in waves, each stronger than the last, and she could no longer tell where one contraction ended and another began. The nurse nearby said something in a calm but firm voice, but the words reached Julie as if through cotton wool. "Breathe, honey, breathe," the woman repeated, adjusting her pillow. "Soon, just a little left. Soon." Julie squeezed it out through clenched teeth. "You said this an hour ago." I know," the nurse smiled, but Julie was not in the mood for smiles. "The first one is always difficult. But you're doing great, you're holding on." Julie nodded, although she didn't feel great at all. She was scared, hurt, and all she wanted was for it to end. Peter was somewhere behind the door, in the hallway where he'd been sent out after he'd nearly fainted after seeing her get enrollment 4. She was angry at him for this, but at the same time she missed his hand in hers. "I want Peter," she muttered as the pain subsided for a second. "I'll call you soon." The nurse patted her on the shoulder. "First, let's give birth, okay?" Julie did not have time to answer. A new contraction covered her, and she screamed without holding back. Time stretched out like rubber, but at some point the doctor who appeared in the room said, "Push, everything will be fine now." She pushed, clenching her teeth, until she heard a thin, piercing cry. "Boy," the doctor's voice broke through the fog. "Congratulations, Mom." Julie collapsed onto her pillow, breathing heavily. She was shaking, but she raised her head, trying to see the small creature that was placed on her chest. He was tiny, wrinkled, with thin arms that twitched helplessly. His cry was loud, demanding, and she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Hello," she whispered, touching his wet head. "You are mine." Peter burst into the room a few minutes later, almost tripping over the threshold. His eyes were red, his hair was disheveled, and his shirt was wrinkled, as if he had been clutching it in his fists all night. He froze by the bed, looking at Julie and the bundle in her hands. Julie smiled weakly, still pale with fatigue. "This is our son." Peter came closer and leaned over to take a closer look. The baby was no longer screaming, he was quietly snoring, clinging to Julie. His face was wrinkled, like an old man's, but there was something incredible about it. "He's small," Peter chuckled, not knowing what else to say. "What were you waiting for?" Julie looked at him with slight mockery. "An elephant? I don't know," he shrugged, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "I just can't believe it." "Me too," she nodded, and her voice trembled. "Look, he has your eyebrows." "My?" Peter squinted, peering. "Well, they're tiny." But just as stubborn. Julie laughed weakly, and he smiled back. They were silent, looking at their son. There was joy, real, warm, but it was mixed with something heavy. Fatigue. Fear. They became parents, but what is it like to be them? Peter reached out his hand, gently touched the baby's finger, and he squeezed it, weakly but firmly. "What should we call it?" he asked quietly. "I was thinking, maybe James." Julie looked at him. "Like your grandfather." "James," Peter nodded. "Sounds normal. James Collins." "Hi, James." Julie leaned over, kissing her son on the forehead. "Welcome." Chaos began at home. They were discharged 2 days later, and Peter and Julie returned to a small room in his parents' house. Ellen helped set up a corner for the crib, old but sturdy, with peeling paint. Linda brought a stack of diapers and a couple of bottles, strictly instructing him to remember to feed every 3 hours. But no amount of advice prepared them for reality. James was crying. Many. Loud. Peter woke up at night from his screams, tripped over a chair, trying to find a bottle, and Julie, with red eyes from lack of sleep, rocked him in her arms, whispering something incoherent. Why isn't he sleeping? Peter stood in the middle of the room at 3 o'clock in the morning, holding an empty bottle. His voice was hoarse with fatigue. "I don't know." Julie shook her head, her hair tangled into a ball. "Maybe he's hot. Or is it cold? Let's take off the blanket." He reached for the crib, but James screamed even louder. "No, don't." Julie stopped him. "What if it freezes? Then what should we do?" Peter spread his hands. "He won't shut up." "Don't yell at me." She shot him a look full of irritation. "I don't know either." "I'm not shouting." He lowered his voice, but the tension remained. "It's just, I thought it would be easier." "Easier?" Julie snorted, continuing to rock her son. "Did you think a child is like a dog? Feed him, and he sleeps?" "I don't know what I was thinking." Peter collapsed into a chair, rubbing his face. "I don't understand anything at all." James finally quieted down, and Julie gently laid him down in his crib. She sat down next to Peter with her head in her hands. "We screwed up, right?" she asked quietly. "I don't know yet," he shrugged. "But I'm tired. And you?" "To death." Julie looked at him, her eyes shining with tears. "I love him, but I don't know how to be a mother. I don't know how to be a dad." Peter took her hand. "But he's cool, isn't he?" "True," she smiled faintly. "Only loud." They laughed, quietly so as not to wake James. There was joy in those little moments when he smiled in his sleep or grabbed their fingers. But she was drowning in fatigue and fear. They didn't know how to change diapers correctly, how much milk was needed in a bottle, why he cried even when he was full. Ellen helped, but her advice often ended with the phrase, "You'll figure it out on your own." And Linda called every day asking, "Do you feed him by the hour? Because he's thin." One evening, a week after the birth, Peter tried to put James to bed while Julie washed the dishes. He walked around the room, humming something inaudible, but the baby just whimpered. "Come on, Jay, sleep." Peter rocked him, feeling his back ache. "Well, what else do you need? Maybe a lullaby." Julie looked into the room, wiping her hands with a towel. "I sing," he grimaced, "but he doesn't seem to be a fan of my voice." "Let me try." She took James and began to quietly hum an old song that her mother sang to her. 5 minutes later, he fell asleep. "How do you do this?" Peter looked at her with envy. "I don't know," Julie shrugged, putting her son into bed. "Just lucky." "You're better at handling it than I am." He sat on the bed, looking at the sleeping James. "It's not true." She sat down next to him. "You try too. It's just, we both don't know how." "Yes," Peter nodded, "but he is ours. This is cool, right?" "Cool," Julie smiled, but there was more fatigue than joy in her voice. "It's just scary." The year flew by in a blur, leaving behind a scattering of sleepless nights, empty formula bottles, and a mountain of diapers that never ended. James was no longer the tiny lump that screamed in the hospital room. Now he was crawling around the room, reaching for wires and squealing with joy when he managed to drop something. Peter and Julie still lived in his parents' house, in the same cramped room where the bed, crib, and old chest of drawers took up almost all the space. They tried to cope, but every day brought new cracks, small, imperceptible at first, but cutting deeper and deeper into their lives. The morning began with the usual chaos. Peter tripped over scattered toys as he made his way to the kitchen, where Julie was trying to feed James and make coffee at the same time. The baby spread porridge on the table, giggling, and she tiredly wiped his face with a damp rag. "Couldn't you get it off the floor?" Julie said, not looking at Peter as he entered. Her voice was harsh, like the sound of a spoon hitting a bowl. "What to remove?" He stopped, gloomily looking around the room. "I just got up." "Toys," she nodded at the colored cubes under her feet. "James scattered them all evening yesterday, and you didn't even think about collecting them." "I was on shift until midnight." Peter crossed his arms, feeling irritation rising. "I came, and you were already asleep. When was I supposed to clean up? So I'm not tired?" Julie turned sharply to him, her eyes sparkling. "I'm alone with him all day while you're at work, and then I get up at night when he cries." "I'm getting up too," he raised his voice, although he tried to control himself. "Yesterday I rocked it twice while you were snoring." "Snored?" She snorted, throwing the rag on the table. "Seriously, Peter? Are you going to rub this in my face now?" "I'm not poking." He stepped towards the coffee maker, trying to distract himself. "I'm just saying that I'm trying too." "You're not the only heroine here." James whimpered, feeling the tension, and Julie sighed, turning back to him. "Hush, little one, everything is fine." She stroked his head, but her voice was trembling. "Peter, I'm not a heroine. I just want you to help at least sometimes, without waiting for me to ask." "Why am I not helping?" He poured coffee, splashing a little on the table, and cursed under his breath. "I work, I bring money. Or does that not count?" "It's believed." Julie looked at him tiredly. "But there's also a lot to do at home. I can't do everything alone." "I'm not making you pull." He wiped the stain with a rag, throwing it into the sink. "It's just, I don't know how to manage everything." "Do I know?" She lifted James from his chair, wiping his hands. "We both don't know, but at least you could have turned on." The conversation was cut short when James reached for her hair, tugging at a strand. She winced, but did not move away, and Peter silently left the kitchen, feeling the anger building up inside. He loved her, he loved James, but these small quarrels about toys, about coffee, about who was more tired became a habit. During the day, Peter went to work. He worked part-time in a car repair shop, repairing cars and carrying spare parts. He returned late when it was already dark outside the window, and only the nightlight was burning in the room. Julie sat cross-legged on the bed, scrolling through her phone. James was sleeping in his crib, snoring quietly. "Hey," Peter threw his jacket on the chair, taking off his shoes. "How is the day?" "Okay," Julie didn't look up. "And you?" "I'm tired as a dog." He plopped down next to me, rubbing his neck. "The boss made 3 engines go through. I barely crawled." "Poor thing," she said without much warmth, continuing to scroll through the screen. Peter noticed her tone, but decided not to bother. Instead, he nodded towards the crib. "Did he fall asleep for a long time?" "An hour," Julie sighed, putting her phone down. "He cried until I rocked him to sleep." "Where have you been?" "I told you at work," he frowned. "Don't you believe it?" "I believe," she shrugged. "You just promised to come early." "I thought at least you could help him today." "I didn't promise." Peter straightened up, feeling the tension return. "I said I would try. But the boss delayed me. What could I do?" "I could have called." Julie looked at him, and resentment flashed in her eyes. "I'm alone all day, Peter. With him, with the dishes, with this mess, and you come and immediately fall asleep. What should I do?" He raised his voice, but then lowered it, looking at James. "I work hard so that we have at least some money. Or do you want us to live on benefits?" "I'm not talking about money," she also switched to a whisper, but sharply. "I mean that it's like you're not here. Work, work, but what about at home?" "I'm resting at home," he crossed his arms. "Or should I immediately grab the vacuum cleaner from the doorway?" "Why not?" Julie jumped up, her voice trembling. "I plow all day, and you come and rest. This is fair, don't you think?" "Honestly?" Peter also stood up, feeling his anger boiling. "I lie under cars all day with my hands in fuel oil so that we don't go hungry." "Are you talking about a vacuum cleaner?" "And I'm with a child all day who screams if I move away for a second." She stepped towards him, her eyes shining with tears. "Do you think it's easy?" "I'm not saying it's easy," he clenched his fists. "But I can't break away, Julie." James tossed and turned in his crib, whimpered, and they both froze. Julie rushed to him and picked him up, rocking him. That's it, sleep," she whispered, stroking his back. Peter looked at her, feeling his anger give way to fatigue. "Sorry," he said quietly, sitting back down on the bed. "I didn't want to yell." "Me too." Julie did not turn around, continuing to rock her son. I can't do this anymore." "How so?" He frowned. "Alone." She finally looked at him, and her voice was almost pleading. "I need help, Peter. Not just money." "I'm trying." He lowered his head, rubbing his temples. "I really try." "I know." Julie put James back down and sat down next to Peter. "But this is not enough." They fell silent. The silence was heavy, saturated with the unspoken. Peter wanted to hug her and tell her that everything would get better, but the words got stuck in his throat. Julie looked at the floor, fiddling with the edge of the blanket. They still loved each other. It was felt in their looks, in the way they did not leave the room, despite the quarrel. But everyday life, responsibilities, this cramped life with a child in my arms slowly ate away what had been before. They lay in silence, each in their own thoughts. There was love, but it was covered with the dust of little things, unclean toys, unwashed dishes, unspoken expectations. The first cracks in their marriage were growing wider, and neither Peter nor Julie knew how to mend them. The kitchen in Peter's parents' house was small, cramped, with the smell of burnt potatoes and baby formula. Julie stood at the stove, stirring something in a pot, while James, almost 2 years old, fiddled with plastic spoons on the floor. Peter had just returned from work. His shoes had left muddy footprints on the threshold, and his jacket was hanging on the chair as if thrown in a hurry. He sat at the table, rubbing his neck, and watched her silently move the spoon. "You're late again." Julie didn't turn around, but her voice was sharp, like a knife lying next to her. "The boss asked me to finish one car." Peter sighed, feeling the fatigue pressing on his shoulders. I wrote to you. I wrote it, she snorted, throwing the spoon into the sink with a loud thud. I'll be there later. Is that all you can do? What else? He frowned, looking at her back. I can't quit my job, Julie. We need money. Money, she turned, crossing her arms. Her eyes were red, either from tears or from lack of sleep. And I'm here alone with James, while you earn money. Have you ever thought about what it's like for me? I think, Peter raised his voice, but then lowered it when he noticed how James froze, looking at them. I think every day. But what should I do? Quit? Maybe at least come on time. She stepped towards him, her voice trembling. I'm not asking for the moon to fall from the sky, Peter. Just be home when you said you would. I'm trying, he stood up, feeling irritation boiling over. But you know how it happens there. I'm not a boss, I'm a subordinate. Who am I? Julie looked at him, and pain flashed in her gaze. Your servant, I sit here, cook, clean, while you try. I didn't say that, he clenched his fists, trying not to lose his temper. You turn everything around yourself. Am I turning it over? She laughed, but not with amusement. You don't even notice how I'm drowning, Peter. I'm drowning, and you just watch. Am I not drowning? He stepped towards her. His voice became louder. I work hard, come, and you immediately rush at me. When do I rest, Julie? Rest, she waved her hand, turning away. Go to bed, and I'll figure it out myself. As always. Stop it, Peter grabbed her hand, but she pulled away. Don't touch me, Julie glanced at him, full of anger and fatigue. I'm tired, Peter. I'm tired of being alone in this marriage. He froze, feeling her words hit home. I'm here every day. For you, for James. You're here with your body, she shook her head. I don't know where you really are anymore. James whined, dropping the spoons, and Julie leaned towards him, picking him up. That's enough, she said quietly but firmly. I'm leaving. Where? Peter blinked, not understanding. Somewhere, she went to the door, holding James. I need to clear my head. I'll stay at my mom's for the night. Julie, wait, he stepped after her, but she had already grabbed her bag and left, slamming the door. Peter was left standing in the middle of the kitchen, looking at the empty chair. The pan hissed on the stove, and he turned off the gas, feeling how everything inside was shrinking. He didn't know what to say to stop her. Maybe there were no such words. Julie called her friend Kate from the car, while James dozed in the back seat. Linda agreed to take him for the night, and half an hour later Julie was standing outside her mother's house, handing over her son. Are you okay? Linda frowned, noticing her tense face. No, Julie shook her head. But I'll figure it out. Keep an eye on him, okay? Of course, Linda nodded. Where are you going? Meet Kate, Julie shrugged. I'll be back in the morning. She left without waiting for questions. Kate was waiting for her at the bar on the next street, a noisy place with dim lights, cheap beer, and music that drowned out thoughts. When Julie walked in, Kate was already sitting at the counter, holding a cocktail with a brightly colored straw. You look like you've been run over by a truck, Kate grinned, pushing the glass towards her. Drink, you need it. Thank you. Julie took the glass and took a long sip. The sweet alcohol burned her throat, but she didn't wince. Today, everything is crap at once. Argument, Kate narrowed her eyes, taking a sip from hers. Yes, Julie nodded, with Peter. Again. What is it about this time? Kate rolled her eyes. Money? James? Or is he just breathing wrong? All at once, Julie smiled bitterly. He comes late, I sit alone like a fool, and then we argue about who is more tired. Classic, Kate chuckled. You're like old people with him, honestly. How old are you? And you're already swearing like my ancestors. Maybe old people. Julie took another sip, feeling the warmth spreading through her body. I don't know, Kate. I thought it would be different. Everyone thinks so, Kate shrugged. And then bam, a child, everyday life, and hello, love is over. It's not over, Julie shook her head. It just covered her with something. I don't even really see Peter. Only his jacket is on the chair. Then shake yourself up. Kate nudged her. Have another drink and dance. Forget about him at least for the evening. Julie nodded and ordered another cocktail. The music was humming, people around were laughing, and she gradually let go of the tension. After the third glass, my head began to spin, and my resentment towards Peter became somehow distant, blurry. Kate dragged her to dance, and Julie moved to the rhythm, laughing for the first time in a week. Look how handsome he is, Kate whispered in her ear, nodding at the guy at the counter. Tall, with dark hair and light stubble, he stood with a beer, looking in their direction. And what? Julie shrugged, but her heart skipped a beat. And the fact that he's staring at you, Kate winked. Go and chat. Feel alive for once. I'm married, Julie grimaced, but Kate just laughed. And what? This is not a prison. Just talk. Julie hesitated, but alcohol and resentment pushed her forward. She walked up to the bar, ordered more drinks, and the guy, his name was Mike, he later said, smiled at her. Are you alone here? He asked. His voice was low, with a slight hoarseness. With a friend, Julie nodded at Kate, who was already dancing with someone else. And you? One, he shrugged, but I can keep you company. They started talking about music, about the bar, about all sorts of nonsense. Mike was easy, unobtrusive, and Julie suddenly realized how long it had been since she felt like just a girl, and not a mother or a wife. He joked, she laughed, and each new glass made her bolder. When he suggested going out for a smoke, she agreed, although she did not smoke. It was cold outside, but the alcohol warmed me up. They stood against the wall, chatting, and at some point Mike moved closer. You're beautiful, you know, he said, looking into her eyes. Thank you, Julie smiled, feeling her cheeks burn. You're okay, too. He leaned in, and she didn't move away. The kiss was sharp, alien, but there was something in it that she lacked attention, lightness, oblivion. They went back into the bar, then out again, and an hour later they found themselves in the back seat of his car. Everything happened quickly, awkwardly, on the spur of the moment. Julie didn't think about Peter, about James, about the ring on her finger, just about how tired I am of being myself. When it was over, she sat looking out the dark window while Mike lit a cigarette. Are you okay? He asked, exhaling smoke. Yes, Julie lied, feeling reality return. I have to go. She left without saying goodbye to Kate, called a taxi, and went to her mother. It was empty inside, no joy, no relief, only shame and heaviness. She cheated on Peter. I succumbed to emotions, alcohol, and momentary weakness. And now I don't know how to live with it. Morning burst into Linda's room with gray light breaking through the thin curtains. Julie was lying on a narrow bed in her old room, the one where she had slept as a schoolgirl. James was snoring quietly in the crib next to him. Linda had set it up yesterday when Julie arrived at night, red-eyed and carrying a bag over her shoulder. My head was buzzing from the drink, but it was nothing compared to the heaviness in my chest. She did not sleep all night. She replayed the bar, Mike, his hands, the smell of cigarettes in her head. And Peter, whom she betrayed. The phone vibrated on the nightstand, a message from him. Where are you? Is James with you? Julie pressed her lips together, feeling tears sting her eyes. She didn't answer yesterday, she couldn't. But now it was impossible to delay. She dialed his number, and each ring sounded like a hammer blow. Julie. Peter's voice was hoarse, tired, but hope flashed in it. Are you at Mom's? Yes, she swallowed, trying to sound even. With James here. Thank God, he exhaled. I didn't sleep half the night. Why didn't you write? I? Julie hesitated, looking at her trembling fingers. Peter, we need to talk. I became wary. I won't be back, she said quietly but firmly, and the silence on the other end of the line became deafening. What do you mean, I won't come back? Peter coughed as if he didn't believe it. Julie, are you serious? Yes, she closed her eyes, feeling the words cutting her throat. Yesterday, I was in a bar with Kate, and I cheated on you. Silence. Long, heavy, like a concrete slab. She heard his breathing sharp, intermittent, and understood that every word hit him like a fist. You. What? He finally squeezed out, his voice trembling. Repeat. I cheated on you. Julie opened her eyes, looking at the ceiling. With some guy. Yesterday. I drank, and it happened. It happened so, he repeated slowly. You're kidding, right? Is this some kind of sick joke? No, she shook her head, although he didn't see. Sorry, Peter. I didn't want it to happen like this. You didn't want to. His voice broke into a scream, but immediately lowered the tone. You went to a bar, got drunk, slept with someone, and now you didn't want to. Julie, you. How could you? I don't know. Tears flowed down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. I was angry, tired. Everything was mixed up. It's not an excuse, I know. Not an excuse? He chuckled bitterly. You are my wife, Julie. We have a son, and you just took it and— I know, she interrupted him, feeling shame burning her from the inside. I ruined everything, so I'm leaving. Are you leaving? Peter fell silent, then continued more quietly. Where? What are you even talking about? I'm staying with my mom. Julie squeezed the phone tighter. I'm picking up James. And I want a divorce. The word fell like a stone into water, and the circles from it dispersed in silence. Peter didn't answer right away. She could hear him breathing heavily, as if he was suffocating. Divorce, he finally said, and there was no anger in his voice, only emptiness. Do you really want this? Yes, Julie nodded, although everything inside screamed against it. It will be better for us. I can't pretend anymore that everything is fine with us. And James, his voice trembled. Will you take him from me too? He will be with me, she swallowed. But you will be able to see him. I don't mind. I don't mind, Peter chuckled, and now there was bitterness in his tone. Thank you, Julie. Very generous of you. Peter, please, she whispered pleadingly. Don't make it harder. More difficult. He raised his voice. You ruined my life, and I also have to remain silent. I'm sorry, Julie began to cry, unable to hold back. I didn't want to hurt you. But I hurt you, he exhaled. Do what you want. Peter. She began, but he interrupted. That's it, Julie. The rest, and the connection was broken. She threw the phone on the bed, wrapping her arms around herself. Tears flowed, but there was no relief, only guilt and emptiness. She knew that what she had done was terrible, but she couldn't go back and pretend that nothing had happened. That was the end. Peter sat on the couch in their room, looking at James' empty crib. The phone was lying nearby. The screen was still glowing after the call. He didn't move, didn't blink, he just looked, as if he could take everything back with his gaze. Julie cheated on him. The words were playing in his head like a broken record, but he still didn't believe it. His Julie, the one who laughed at his jokes, who kissed him goodnight, who bore him his son, did it. With someone else. He stood up, walked over to the crib, and ran his hand along the wooden edge. James's little pillow was still there, smelling of baby shampoo. Peter squeezed it in his hands, feeling the pressure in his chest. She left. I took my son. I want a divorce. Everything they had, their marriage, their family collapsed overnight. Damn, he threw the pillow on the floor, hitting the wall with his fist. The pain in his knuckles was sharp, but he didn't even wince. Damn it, Julie. He collapsed back onto the sofa, covering his face with his hands. There were no tears, only emptiness and anger mixed with something he couldn't name. He loved her. Even now, after everything, he still loves. But she left, and he was left alone in this room, in this house, in this life that they built together. Julie gathered up James' things, his clothes, his toys, his bottle, and put them in her bag. Linda helped silently, but her gaze was heavy. Are you sure? She finally asked as Julie zipped up. Yes, Julie nodded, although she was not sure. I'll file for divorce. It will be better this way. Better for whom? Linda crossed her arms. For you? For James? For Peter? For everyone. Julie lifted her son into her arms, pressing him to her. I can't live with him after this, Mom. After what? Linda narrowed her eyes. What have you done? It doesn't matter. Julie turned away. I ruined everything. And now I'm fixing it. Linda shook her head, but didn't argue. Julie left the house, got into the car, and drove to the mayor's office. There, she took the divorce application form, filled it out with a trembling hand, and submitted it. Her fingers needed the ring on her finger, but she didn't take it off, she couldn't yet. When she returned to her mother, James had already woken up, and she took care of him, fed him, played, put him to bed. But every time I looked at him, I saw Peter, his eyebrows, his smile, and she understood that the breakup did not erase what was. He simply broke them into pieces. The room where Peter spent the last 2 years of his life now seemed alien to him. The bed he and Julie slept on was unmade, the blanket rumpled, as if someone had thrown it onto the floor in a hurry. James' crib empty, with a lone rattle forgotten in the corner, was silent, a reminder of what he had lost. On the dresser was their wedding photo, a cheap frame of them both trying to smile. Peter took it in his hands, ran his finger along the glass, but immediately threw it into the drawer, slamming it with such force that the wood cracked. Julie left 3 days ago. For 3 days he lived in this vacuum. He went to work, was silent at dinner with his parents, and lay at night looking at the ceiling. Her words, "I cheated on you, I want a divorce," were spinning in his head like a broken record that he couldn't turn off. He was angry, he hated her, but then longing came, and he caught himself missing her voice, her smell, the way she laughed at his stupid jokes. And James, the thought of his son being cut like a knife. He hadn't seen him since that day, and every time he imagined the baby calling "Daddy," Peter felt like he was suffocating. "Are you okay?" The voice of Ellen, his mother, came from behind the door. She stood in the doorway, holding a mug of tea in her hands, her eyes full of concern. No, Peter didn't even turn around, continuing to stare at the empty crib. "Would you be? I understand that this is hard for you." She stepped inside and put the mug on the chest of drawers. "But you can't just sit here and what?" He turned sharply, his voice was hoarse. "Wait until she changes her mind. Until he returns my son to me. She filed for divorce, Mom. It's over." "It's not over." Ellen shook her head. "You have a child. You can talk, establish. Set it up?" Peter chuckled bitterly. "She slept with someone, and I have to fix it. Are you serious?" Ellen fell silent, pursing her lips. She wanted to help, he saw it, but her words only drove him deeper into this hole. Peter turned away and clenched his fists. "I'm leaving," he said quietly but firmly. "Where?" She blinked, not understanding. "I don't know," he shrugged. "To earn money. Tom said there was construction work in the next state. They pay okay. I'll go there." "Peter, wait." Ellen stepped towards him, her voice trembling. "You can't just run away. And James? What about us?" "James is with her." He looked at his mother, and there was emptiness in his eyes. "And here, I can't stay, Mom. Every corner here is them. I'm suffocating." "But give it all up." She began, but he interrupted. "I'm not quitting." Peter clenched his jaw. "I'm trying to survive. If I stay, I'll go crazy. I need to leave, at least for a while." Ellen looked at him for a long time, then nodded, although tears glistened in her eyes. "Okay," she said quietly, "but promise to call and return." "I promise," he nodded, although he wasn't sure if he could keep it. She left, leaving him alone. Peter opened the closet, pulled out an old duffel bag, and started throwing things into it: t-shirts, jeans, a couple of sweaters. Nothing extra. He did not plan to take the memories with him. They already burned him from the inside. The ring he was still wearing felt cold on his finger, and he hesitated before taking it off, throwing it on the chest of drawers. It fell with a quiet thud, and the sound was like a point in their history. The next day, he met Tom at a diner on the outskirts. The friend was sitting at the table, chewing a burger, and looked as usual disheveled, in a bright t-shirt, with an eternal grin. "Are you serious?" Tom put down his food, looking at the bag at Peter's feet. "On a construction site in Ohio?" "Yes," Peter nodded, stirring the coffee he didn't even intend to drink. "You said it yourself, there is work there." "Yes," Tom shrugged. "But this is no picnic, brother. It's hard, dirty, living in a dorm with a bunch of men. Are you ready?" "I don't care." Peter looked into his eyes. Just get away from here. Because of Julie, Tom squinted and Peter tensed. I don't want to talk about it. He pushed the mug away. Just tell me how to get there. Okay, okay. Tom raised his hands in surrender. There is one guy, a contractor. I'll give you his number. Call and say it's from me. But Pete, are you sure? Maybe it's better. I'm sure, Peter interrupted him, his voice hard as stone. I need to leave, even to the ends of the world. Tom nodded, took out his phone, and sent him the contact. They sat for a little longer, but the conversation didn't go well. Peter was silent, and Tom didn't know how to get him out of this darkness. At night, he stood at the bus stop, his bag hanging on his shoulder, the wind cold on his face. His parents walked him to the threshold. His mother hugged him, whispering, "Take care of yourself." His father clapped him on the back, saying nothing. Peter didn't look back as he walked toward the road. He felt crushed, as if a truck had driven through his life, leaving only rubble behind. Julie, James, their marriage, it was all there somewhere in the past, and he moved forward, not knowing where. The bus pulled up, old, with the smell of gasoline and shabby seats. Peter sat by the window, watching the city lights fade into darkness. The pain sat in his chest, sharp, but muffled. He did not cry, did not scream. He simply looked into emptiness. He wanted to escape from her betrayal, from the empty room, from himself. The Ohio job was just an excuse, but he clung to it like a lifeline. Where are we going? The driver, an elderly man with gray hair, looked at him through the mirror. Ohio, Peter answered quietly, without taking his eyes off the window. Far, the driver chuckled. For how long? I don't know, he shrugged. Let's see. The bus started moving and Peter closed his eyes, feeling the road carry him away. It was empty inside, no plans, no hopes, only pain and the desire to forget. He did not know what awaited him there, in this foreign state, but he could no longer stay here. Every step of Julie, every look of hers, every cry of James lived within these walls, and he ran from them, hoping that the distance would at least slightly muffle this melancholy. The bus dropped Peter off at a dusty stop somewhere in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio. The morning was cold, with a sharp wind that blew debris across the asphalt. He stood with his bag over his shoulder, looking at the low gray buildings and smoking chimneys in the distance. This was not the city one dreams of, working class, harsh, with the smell of gasoline and metal. But this was where he had escaped, and now this was his new home, at least for a while. The contractor Tom was talking about turned out to be a heavy-set guy named Roy Balding, with a thick mustache and a voice like the roar of an old truck. He met Peter at a construction site, a huge site littered with concrete blocks, rebar, and piles of sand. The noise was deafening. Saws were screeching, cranes were humming. Someone was shouting commands against the background of the clanging of metal. "You're from Tom, right?" Roy looked him over, as if he was wondering if he would break under the first weight. "Have you worked at a construction site before?" "No," Peter shook his head, shifting from foot to foot. "But I'm learning quickly." "Fast is good," Roy spat in the dust. "This is not a resort. You carry blocks, mix the solution, and listen to what they say. We pay once a week. The dorm is over there." He waved his hand at a long building with peeling paint. "Questions?" "No." Peter squeezed the handle of his bag. "When to start?" "Right now," Roy chuckled, tossing him an orange vest. "Put it on for me too." The first days were hell. Peter carried concrete slabs until his back began to ache, needed mortar that made his hands calluses, and collapsed on a dorm bed that smelled of sweat and cheap tobacco. His neighbors were the same hard workers, gloomy, tired, with stories that they told over beer in the evening. He was silent, listened, but did not join in. He did not want to. He had enough of his thoughts, which hovered around Julie and James like flies over garbage. "Why are you so gloomy?" Jack, a lanky guy with a tattoo on his neck, asked one evening, handing him a bottle of beer. They sat on the porch of the dorm, looking at the sunset over the construction site. "I'm tired." Peter took the bottle, but didn't open it. "It's just a hard day." "Come on," Jack grinned. "You're like this every day. Grandma left, or what?" Peter tensed, squeezed the bottle tighter, but nodded. "Something like that," he said quietly. My wife left. With my son. Hard, Jack whistled, taking a sip from his. How old is the boy? 2. Peter looked at his dirty hands. Soon it will be 3. And you ran away here? Jack narrowed his eyes. From her or from yourself? From everything, Peter shrugged, opening his beer. Cold bitterness burned my throat, but did not help. I don't know what else to do. Well, at least they pay here, Jack chuckled. Otherwise, it would have been really bad. Take my example, the woman left. I drink, work, live. It's simple. Simple, Peter repeated, but there was nothing simple inside. He drank, listened to Jack tell stories about his adventures, but his thoughts still returned home. To Julie, to her voice when she said divorce. To James, whom he had not seen for a month. A month passed, then 2. The work was exhausting, but there was a point it didn't let me think. Peter learned to carry blocks without breaking his back, to operate a concrete mixer, to yell at newbies if they were lazy. Roy even praised him once, muttering, "You won't be lost." He became stronger not only with his arms, but also inside. Hard work forged something new, adult, out of him that was not there before. At night, lying on a creaking bed, he thought. First, about the pain, how Julie betrayed him, how she took her son, how everything collapsed. He was angry, imagining how he shouted at her, how he demanded James back. But then the anger began to melt, and questions took its place. Why did she go to the bar? Why did you change? What did he do wrong? One day, after his shift, he was sitting outside the dorm with a notebook that he bought at a local store. Jack laughed, calling him a writer, but Peter just wanted to unload his thoughts. He wrote clumsily, without order. She said she was drowning. I didn't see. I worked. I thought that was enough. But she needed more. Maybe I was blind. She's wrong, but I'm not a saint either. James, I should have been with him more often, not just to bring money. He reread it, crumpled the sheet, and threw it in the trash. But the words remained in my head like splinters. He began to understand that not everything was her fault. He went to work, left her alone with the child, with everyday life, with this cramped life. I didn't notice how it went out. Cheating was her fault, but the cracks started earlier, and he helped make them. 3 months later, Peter called home. Mom answered immediately, her voice trembling with joy. Peter, where are you? How are you? She almost cried. In Ohio, he stood at the old gas station machine, clutching the pipe. Working. Everything is fine. You're thin, I guess. Ellen sighed. Do you even eat there? I eat, he smiled faintly. Mom, how are you doing? How's Dad? Okay, she hesitated. And Julie, she called a couple of times. I asked about you. About me? Peter frowned. His heart skipped a beat. For what? I don't know. Ellen lowered her voice. She said James was bored. I want you to come. He hung up the phone, looking at the sunset over the gas station. James is bored. Those words touched something inside that he was trying to bury. He left to escape, but his son remained there small, with his eyebrows, with his smile. And Julie, he still loved her, even after everything. Not like before, but I loved it. Peter returned to the construction site and took up his work with renewed vigor. And gradually he realized, the mistakes of the past will not disappear, but he can correct them. Not for Julie, not for himself, for James. One evening, sitting with Jack over a beer, he said, I'll probably be back soon. Where? Jack narrowed his eyes. To you? Not to her. Peter shook his head. To my son. Well, it's up to you. Jack shrugged his shoulders. Just don't disappear, brother. Peter nodded, looking up at the stars above the construction site. He still didn't know how he would return, what he would say, what he would do. But for the first time in months, a fire lit up in him, not of hope, but of determination. He ran away to survive, but now he wanted to live. The bus was taking Peter back through the same gray roads that had carried him away almost a year ago. Outside the window, fields, gas stations, small towns, similar to one another, flashed by, but he barely noticed them. The bag lay on his lap, worn, with a torn strap, the same one with which he left. Only now he was different. Not the confused guy who was running from pain, but someone new with calloused hands, with firmness in his shoulders, with thoughts that no longer darted about like wasps in a jar. Ohio hardened him. He did not return empty-handed, but with money in his pocket and determination in his chest. Peter got off the bus, breathed in this air, and felt something shrink inside. House, but not the one he left behind. That house was Broken Julie, James, their marriage. This was simply the place where he was born, and now he had to build something new. He went straight to his parents. Ellen opened the door, screamed, and rushed to hug him, not even allowing him to take off her shoes. Her hands trembled, and her voice broke with joy. Peter, Lord, she pulled back, looking him over. Finn, why didn't you warn me? I wanted a surprise, he smiled faintly, putting the bag on the floor. Where is Dad? In the garage. Ellen pulled him into the house. Go, wash, eat. How long will you stay? I don't know yet, Peter shrugged, looking at the familiar walls. But I'm back. I want to see James. He's with Julie. Ellen hesitated, her gaze becoming cautious. She asked about you a couple of months ago. She said you could come if you wanted. I want to, he nodded, feeling his heart skip a beat. I'll call her today. The father, Michael, came out of the garage, wiping his hands on a rag. He silently hugged Peter, slapped him on the back harder than necessary, and muttered, You look like a man, not like a boy. This is good. I tried, Peter chuckled, but something thawed inside. They didn't ask why he was leaving, they didn't reproach him, they just took him back, and that was enough. Later, sitting on the sofa with a mug of tea, Peter dialed Julie's number. His hands shook slightly, but he clutched the phone tighter. The beeps went on for a long time, and he already thought that she would not answer, but finally he heard her voice quiet, a little tired. Peter? A flash of surprise flashed through him. Where are you? Home, he coughed, clearing his throat. Came back today. I want to see James. Silence. Julie was breathing into the phone, and he could almost see her fiddling with her fingers at the edge of her sleeve, an old habit. Okay, she finally said. He is with his mother now. Can you come tomorrow? To the park where we walked before? Yes, Peter nodded, although she didn't see. At what time? At 2, Julie hesitated. He asked about you. Recently. Did you ask? His voice trembled, and he swallowed. What did you say? It's just, where's Daddy? She sighed quietly. I said that you are far away, but you will come back. He waited. I'm here, Peter pursed his lips. I'll be there tomorrow. Okay, Julie paused. See you tomorrow. She hung up and Peter sat there, staring at the screen. James asked about him. These words hit my head like nails, but instead of pain, they brought warmth. He left, abandoned everything, but his son did not forget, and that was something he could cling to. The next day, Peter stood at the entrance to the park, nervously fiddling with the hem of his jacket. The sun was shining brightly, but the wind was cold, blowing fallen leaves along the paths. He had arrived earlier, at 1:30, and now he waited, looking at the benches where he and Julie had once sat together. Everything was familiar, but alien, as if he was looking at his life through a glass darkly. And then he saw them. Julie walked down the path, holding James' hand. She looked much the same, dark ponytail, denim jacket, but there was something new in her walk, a tired confidence. And James. Peter froze, feeling his throat tighten. The baby has grown up almost 3 years old, long legs in worn jeans, blonde hair sticking out from under a hat. He pulled Julie by the hand, chatting something, and his voice, high and clear, reached Peter like an echo of the past. Julie noticed him and stopped. James also froze, looking at the tall man at the entrance. Peter stepped forward, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it would jump out of his chest. Hi, he said, looking at Julie, but then lowered his eyes to his son. Hello, Jay. Julie nodded, her face tense but soft. Hi, she let go of James's hand. Here, this is your dad. James blinked, looking up at Peter. His eyes, the same gray-green as Peter's, were full of curiosity and slight fear. Dad, he asked quietly, fiddling with his hat. Yes, Peter squatted down to be on the same level with him. His voice trembled, but he smiled. I'm your dad. Do you remember me? James paused, then nodded, slowly, as if remembering. You were leaving, he said, and the words hit Peter harder than he expected. I was leaving, Peter swallowed, feeling tears burning his eyes. But I'm back. To you. James stepped closer, reached out, touched his cheek. The small fingers were cold, but warm inside, like life. Peter took his hand, squeezed it, and at that moment something inside him broke, not from pain, but from relief. He hugged his son and held him close, inhaling the smell of baby shampoo and wool from the hat. I missed you, he whispered, and his voice broke. I really missed you, Jay. Me too. James wrapped his arms around his neck, burying his face in his shoulder. Mom said you are far away. Now I'm here, Peter pulled away, looking into his eyes. And I won't leave again, I promise. Julie stood to the side with her arms crossed and looked at them. Her face was impenetrable, but something flashed in her eyes, not anger, not resentment, but simply fatigue and, perhaps, a shadow of relief. Peter nodded at her, but didn't say anything. This moment wasn't about them. It was about him and James. They went to the carousel. James pulled Peter by the hand, showing him where he wanted to ride, and he listened, laughed, and threw him into the air. Every son's cry, every "Dad, look," sewed up the hole in his heart. He had changed, mature, confident, but this little boy reminded him why he came back. Not for Julie, not for the past, but for the future he could give his son. Will you stay? James asked, sitting on the carousel while Peter spun it. Yes, he smiled, sincerely for the first time in a long time. I'm not going anywhere. Julie watched from afar, and Peter knew that there was still a lot unsaid between them. But that didn't matter now. James was there, clutching his hand, and this moment inspired him to move on, not to run, but to walk, step by step, building something new from what was left. The day turned out to be warm, with a light wind that blew dust through the city streets. Peter was walking from the auto repair shop, where he now worked part-time a couple of times a week, part-time to leave time for James. His hands were covered in oil, his jeans were dirty, and his head was filled with thoughts about how to buy his son a new ball. The old one burst after James kicked it against the fence. He turned onto a familiar street where he and Julie had previously gone grocery shopping and suddenly stopped. She stood at the entrance to a small store, the same one where she now worked. Julie was holding a box of some cans in her hands, trying to open the door with her elbow, and did not notice him. Her hair was pulled back into a messy ponytail, her apron with the store logo was slightly askew, and there was a tired look on her face. Peter froze, not knowing whether to leave or call out. They had met recently in the park when he was picking up James, but it had been planned, and now the meeting took him by surprise. The box almost slipped out of her hands, and without thinking, he stepped forward. Let me help, he said, picking up the bottom edge before the cans fell onto the asphalt. Julie started, looked up, and her face froze for a second in surprise. Peter? She blinked, transferring the box into his hands. What are you? What are you doing here? I was passing by, he shrugged, holding the box as if it were a shield. Work nearby. And you? Break ends, Julie nodded toward the store. I'm bringing this inside. Thanks for catching it. You're welcome. Peter stepped towards the door, holding it with his foot while she entered. He followed her, placing the box on the counter and stepping back with his hands in his pockets. The inside smelled of bread and detergent, and another girl stood behind the register, giving them a curious look. I didn't think I'd see you here, Julie straightened her apron, looking at him with slight awkwardness. Usually you walk on the other side. I decided to cut it short, he chuckled, feeling the tension hanging between them. How are you? Okay, she shrugged, fiddling with the edge of the box. I'm working. James is in kindergarten. And you? Same, Peter nodded. Warehouse, workshop, with James on Saturdays. He talked about you yesterday, Julie smiled faintly. He said that you promised him a typewriter. He promised, he nodded, feeling the warmth from her words. I'll buy it one of these days. Is he not sick? No, I'm fine. She looked into his eyes, and the silence became thicker. This was not a meeting where James was the bridge, just them, face to face, without preparation. You have changed, Julie suddenly said, her voice quiet but sincere. I don't know how to explain. Calmer, perhaps. Life has taught me, Peter shrugged, trying not to go deeper. And you are different too. Tired, probably, she chuckled bitterly, but without malice. Work, home, everything. I understand, he nodded, looking at her hands thin, with short nails, without a ring. It, too, had not been on his finger for a long time, but he noticed it only now. They fell silent, and the awkwardness became almost palpable. Peter cleared his throat as he started to leave, but Julie spoke first. Listen, she stepped closer, lowering her voice. I was thinking, we see each other because of James, and that's good. But maybe we shouldn't be so. Strangers. Strangers? He squinted, not quite understanding. Well, Julie hesitated, looking away. Not enemies, not just former people. Friends, or something. For his sake. Friends, Peter repeated it slowly, as if weighing it. The word sounded strange, but not repulsive. He remembered her departure, her confession, the pain that cut him then. But now it was far away, like an old dream. Are you serious? Yes, she nodded, her gaze becoming harder. I don't expect you to forget what happened. I've done a lot of things, I know. But James, he loves us both, and I don't want him to feel this wall. Peter looked at her, and there was no catch in her words, only fatigue and a desire to fix something, even if not completely. He thought about his son, about how he looked at them, and realized that the anger had long burned out. All that was left was life, which had to be lived somehow. Okay, he nodded. His voice was calm but firm. For James' sake. Friends. Thank you, Julie exhaled, as if she had lifted a stone from her shoulders. I don't want quarrels. Enough of them. Me too, Peter smiled faintly, feeling light for the first time during the conversation. He deserves peace of mind. Yes, she nodded, stepping back. It's time for me to work. See you? See you. He stepped towards the door, but turned around. Take care of yourself. You too, Julie answered quietly, and a hint of warmth flashed in her voice. Peter went outside and breathed in the cool air. The conversation left an aftertaste not heavy, but strangely light, as if they had finally put an end to the past without crossing out their son. He moved on, thinking about the car for James, and for the first time in a long time he felt that this meeting did not hurt, but was simply a step towards something new, albeit still unclear. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.